Well, again, I'm Bill Russell, President of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, and we have a special briefing on the Huntersville bond package that will be on the ballot this fall for our voters in the town of Huntersville. And to facilitate the discussion, I want to recognize the 2023 Public Policy Chair, Jeff Tarte.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. For everyone today that's on with us and listening to this presentation, today is really an informational session where we have the mayor of Huntersville and the chief financial officer from Huntersville, who I'll introduce here in a moment. But this is for our executive board as we're trying to become more informed on the issues around the bond that Huntersville will be issuing soon or asking for approval on from their residents. And it's an opportunity also for all of our business owners and folks who are members of the chamber to become more informed on the issues around this bond. This morning we have with us Jackie Huffman, as I mentioned, as the chief financial officer. I have tremendous bias around Jackie because when I was the mayor of Cornelius, she was our CFO who took us from a AA bond rating to a AAA and was recognized almost annually as the top CFO in municipal governance around the state of North Carolina. So she is a tremendous wealth of knowledge and a tremendous resource for the town of Huntersville. Beside her and with us today is Melinda Bales, who is the current mayor. Again, both someone I've worked closely with over the years and also someone I consider a personal friend. These are two people who have tremendous depth and knowledge on this topic and have been a great resource to the community and the citizens and our businesses here in the Lake Norman region. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Melinda, maybe, and then let you guide this conversation as you will take it and share the information as appropriate. And thank you again for being here.
Well, thank you. And I will tell you that Miss Huffman is now our deputy town manager. So not just over finance anymore, but she's got her hands in a lot of various pots. So, and we're very blessed to have her on our team. I will say this to those watching, neither Jackie nor myself can take a position on the bonds. But so what we really want to do today is just really to provide information around the bond package and to educate folks on what that bond package is going to do for the town of Huntersville. And hopefully your board will review this as they go to make some decisions here in the future on whether to support the package or not. Ms. Huffman, if you wouldn't mind, I know you've got a slide deck and we're going to walk through that. But could you just give us a definition, an idea of what general obligation bonds are?
Yes, I'm not sure I can live up to the hype, but I certainly appreciate the kind words from both you and Mr. Tarte. Thanks so much. It's good to be with you. And so I'm not sure this PowerPoint wants to cooperate. Let me try one more time.
They're working, Jackie. We see them here.
Okay. Sweet. Help me because I don't know what slide I'm on.
So you're on the first
mine's stuck on the title screen and not moving. Are you seeing the next slide?
No.
Okay. General obligation bond is a promise to pay in the future. And so we're asking current taxpayers if they would give us the authority to issue bonds that we could use to accomplish some capital projects in the future. Those capital projects will fund things like, we're asking two different bond questions, one surrounding transportation, one surrounding some parks and recreation needs. And the ask is, could we issue debt that future taxpayers would be required to make debt service payments on, to make debt service payments to pay back the money we had borrowed for capital projects. Historically, we have gone to the voters in Huntersville about once every 10 years. So we went to the voters in 2003, and then there was a bond referendum again in 2012. So it's been 11 years, and we have 2 bond questions on the referendum this fall. And those bond questions will be about us issuing some debt for some transportation needs and for some parks and recreation needs.
So can we talk a little bit about why we do general obligation bonds for things like road infrastructure and road improvements, et cetera?
Yes, thank you. I can't stop fighting with PowerPoint. So we can issue bonds for any capital purpose. Frequently, it's done for, say, a town hall or a fire station, and that might make good collateral if we want to go out and borrow money from a bank. But sometimes we need debt for a project that there's not really great collateral on. And we're asking voters for $50 million in transportation projects. Those transportation projects are around intersection improvements and road improvements and sidewalks. And so those type of projects do not provide great collateral for banks, and so a general obligation bond is an ideal form of debt that we could use for that. And generally speaking, general obligation debt, because it's backed by the full faith and credit of the local government, is the lowest interest rate that will usually be able to be issued debt on. So the $50 million question on transportation bonds this fall, let's talk about some of the projects that those might fund. So some of the projects that we contemplate are, there is a improvement to Gilead Road West that we have contemplated for a number of years. We expect we likely would use the bonds, the transportation bonds on some of that. There are projects that are cost share arrangement. So you've seen some major improvements going on in Huntersville at exit 23 that's being converted into a diverging diamond. But there are road improvements we anticipate that will come along Highway 21 and Highway 73. And we have a cooperative agreement with DOT that we would do some betterments, some sidewalk improvements and such on those roadways. And so our cost share would also be eligible. We anticipate some improvements on Stumptown Road, an extension to beyond the east side of 115, and it would be used for that as well. The $8 million that we anticipate that we're asking the voters for in November of this year for parks and recreation bonds could be used for projects such as our cost share that we have with Mecklenburg County on the Huntersville the Park Greenway in downtown in the business park. Another project is we contemplate perhaps expanding the rec center. It currently has space for 2 gyms, and we consider whether or not we would expand that. We also hope to do some additional park land acquisition, and we're in the middle of working on a splash pad for North Mac Park right now, but in a community of 65,000 residents, we're considering whether or not we need a second splash pad. Those are clearly $8 million would not do all of those projects, but we're considering whether or not those projects would, which of those projects we could accomplish with that $8 million. This is consistent with our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, suggesting how many acres of parks and how much gym space we might need. And greenways may well be our most frequently asked for amenity. I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have, frequently asked questions. A lot of folks are generally concerned, what might that do to my tax rate? So we have an independent financial advisor who has calculated for us a debt capacity and an affordability analysis. We expect that if voters approve this debt, we might likely issue bonds in 2024 and might likely again issue in 2028, and divided that way, gradually issuing those bonds so that we have more time to manage the projects and minimize the impact and the burden on the tax rate. We're thinking in the neighborhood of about 3 cents. I think technically the financial advisor has calculated 2.8 cents, but so just around a 3 cent tax increase if we use all of those 58 million in bonds. Having said that, if voters approve debt this fall of this 58 million, that does not mean we will absolutely eventually issue every dollar of that debt. So that will give us the authority to issue it, frankly, over the next 7 to 10 years. And we'll issue that in the increments when we get projects ready. And so another reason why we don't specify exactly which projects we might use those bonds on are frequently we will hit a temporary, at least, roadblock on a project. And so maybe if some right of way becomes more difficult to get, or a project doesn't track as quickly as we thought it would because we have to arrange utilities maybe with the railroad, a project might not track at a specific time. So if we've issued the debt, we want to get the most bang for our buck by accomplishing the projects that are ready. Also, if we have a healthy fund balance here, we are AAA bond rated, which we're very proud of. That is the highest debt rating that you can have. We currently have a AAA rating from both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. We're proud of that. We have every reason to believe we'd likely be AAA bond rated from them on our next issue, on the future issues. Having said that, that would qualify us for a lowest interest rate, and we'd like to do capital projects using that source of funds rather than all of our savings, because savings can be used for other things, not just capital purposes. And if we do that with debt that's paid back over time, then the citizens and taxpayers who are reaping the benefit of that project are also therefore paying for the benefit, as opposed to using our savings. Regarding whether other things in town might be impacted, naturally the town has to balance their budget just like you have to balance your budget at home, meaning it's not a guarantee that the tax rate will increase exactly 2.8 cents, nor does that mean that if the tax rate goes up in the future that it was exclusively related to a bond package. For instance, if we have if we add a lot of additional personnel at one time, or if we had a significant operating capital commitment, that might cause a change in the tax rate as well. Capital and bond repayment is not the only thing that could impact a future tax rate. Mayor, can you think of other questions that we should address and make sure that the membership of the chamber is aware of before we move forward?
Yes, Jackie, our CIP, our plan, we have the projects that we have currently on that CIP total roughly 200 million, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we put a ton of effort into generating over a 200-page budget document every year, and it has a couple of things in it I think most people would find interesting: a 5-year financial forecast and a 5-year CIP. That 5-year CIP, when we include with that projects that we've not quite finished right now, like Main Street, there's over $234 million worth of projects that we contemplate. So naturally, 58 million in bond projects would not fund all of those projects. So we're going to have to pick and choose which projects, based on what our timing is, we'll do in what order.
But I do think that is where the board has been very purposeful to say, let's not ask the voters for more than we can accomplish in a short period of time. And so to take reasonable bites out of this apple, if you will, which is why you see the total of 58 million in the bond package. Jackie, when will the voters expect to vote on the bond package?
So this November is what we have, the transportation and Parks and Recreation bonds on the ballot, election day, November 7th. There are 2 separate questions that will be on that bond package, and voters will get to weigh each one up or down then.
And let me ask you this last question. If the bond package, transportation bond package, Parks and Rec bond package, if they are not supported, if they do not pass in November, specifically gearing toward the transportation package, where does that leave us with the projects that we have teed up?
So the current board has requested that we try to get projects what we call shovel ready. So we've done a lot of design and to work on some projects. That doesn't mean that we funded all of the project. We funded the design phase of the project. So we probably haven't funded right away, and we certainly haven't funded construction. So there are projects that we have funded the design for now, that would basically stop and not move forward into the next phase of right away and acquisition and construction. So there's some projects that might not continue. Again, there's not a great alternative funding source for transportation related projects. Many parks and rec related projects, we might be able to find a funding source by borrowing money from a bank, but even that's not a guarantee.
Well, and I would venture to say if we did try to do find funding through a bank, we're probably not going to get the same interest rate.
Absolutely,
That's
correct. Generally speaking, general obligation debt is at the lowest interest rate possible.
That's all the questions that I had that I know that we felt like maybe the citizens may want to hear. Are there any other questions, Jeff?
Yeah, let me ask a couple things. You're looking at about a quarter of your ask is for about a quarter of your CIP. About how many projects does that comprise that are quote shovel ready, or they're in the higher end of your priority list?
There are a minimum of at least 5 to 8, I would say, that we're getting very close to shovel ready. And there are many different smaller projects, like say a sidewalk connection from here to there, that could move forward quicker if we had additional funding sources.
And if a project's shovel ready and not delayed, what criteria will you guys or the town board, do you think, use to prioritize the projects?
Say the projects that are closest to ready to go, that we've completed design on, would occur first. And let's face it, some projects are easier to deliver than others based on maybe there's a topography issue. It wouldn't necessarily just be expense that might keep a project from moving forward. Some community support would go a long way as well. If there's difficulty in getting right away from property owners, that's going to make a significant difference.
You said there's 2 separate initiatives, so you can pass either or both. If they're both passed, will the prioritization be independent because they're separate buckets of money?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yes. A Parks and Rec project would not compete with a transportation project because the funding sources are different. So voters could vote yes to one and not the other. And generally speaking, we have to use Parks and Rec projects for a Parks and Rec purpose and transportation projects for a transportation purpose.
And the vote, if the community accepts these bonds and accepts the obligation, the repayment will become out of ad valorem or property taxes primarily. Is that correct?
I would word it the general fund, and property taxes make up more than 50% of our general fund revenue. Yes.
Okay. And then
if I could also interject, just to remember that in 2012 with the last bond package, we were told, and in all the educational material, was that the tax implication would be up to 5 cents. And Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we got to 3 cents. And we did not touch that 5 cent mark. I think the growth that we experience truly does balance that out. So while the educational material will say 2.8, as we're continuing to grow and thrive, it may not even hit 2.8. It may not hit 2. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like as we continue to grow over the next several years.
Do you guys anticipate the priorities of the list of projects on the CIP changing at all in the next 2 to 3 years?
Personally, I cannot, because these projects we have been working on for many of them for a decade.
So it's safe to say that the residents can have a high degree of confidence that the projects listed are the projects that will be addressed.
Many of these projects, we have a cooperative agreement with somebody else. Maybe we're getting some of the project cost offset, maybe by CRTPO. So we're gonna have to come up with a funding source if this is not it. Yes, sir.
All right. And then the last question I have it's kind of asking a little bit of conjecture and opinion without everybody having the facts. But we all know that CMS is also going to be asking for a $2.5 billion bond issuance and obligation at the exact same time. You're looking for 58 billion. Do you see the
Million, Jeff, million.
million? Yes. Well, I was hoping you'd get a lot of roads built in Cornelius as well. So the 58 million. Do you see any impact from the request for the CMS bonds, or because they're schools, it's completely separate and doesn't really maybe impact your residents the same way?
You know, from where I sit, I think that they are two separate things. And folks who live in Huntersville who are on our road infrastructure each and every day, I venture to say they're going to look at that and say this makes a lot of sense.
Sure. Well, let me leave one commentary. You guys are not allowed to. Nothing prevents me, and if it did, I probably would step on toes anyway, but in a polite way, of course. But traffic happens to be our number one issue. I think you continually hear that from our businesses, from our citizens, from everybody that's been here a while, and the whole Lake Norman region. And this is an opportunity to start addressing transportation needs right now. So I look forward to hopefully a positive outcome for this for our region, not just for Huntersville.
Well, thank you. So do we.
All right. I appreciate your guys' time, and I'm gonna throw it back to Bill.
Mayor, we have the 2 candidate forums coming up. There's going to be on the 17th and 19th of October. My question is, this coming, do you have a pre-meeting before the meeting?
On which date?
This coming meeting on the 18th, September 18th.
No, we do not.
Your meeting starts at 6.
Yes.
Would you be available at 5:45 to draw? As you know, we're going to have 3 people running for mayor, 16 people running for commissioner. So we want to have maybe the 3 mayoral candidates and 5 commissioner candidates on Tuesday, and then the balance of those on Thursday. But we don't want to pick who's going to be doing what. So to show a total impartial and non-favoritism, could we have you at 5:45 this coming Monday select names out of the hat for commissioners who will appear with the 3 mayoral candidates?
Certainly, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, then I'll meet you in town hall at 5:45, and we will select the order of the candidates at that particular time.
Okay.
Thank everyone for their presentation, and Jeff, thank you for emceeing, and we will get this out to our board of directors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.